guys, and welcome to Dark Arts podcast, where we discuss the player book of men and women. If you've ever wondered what an F-boy is, what F-boys do when they are born, and how they move, then this is going to be the podcast for you. Trigger warning, the exposure of this behavior may cause you to feel some type of way. The truth can be dark and it can also be deep. But today I've got a bit of a special topic for you guys. We're talking about self-awareness. You see, I recently did a podcast episode called The F-Boy That Is Self-Aware. And what I discovered when I was kind of going back over some of the thoughts I had when I was a bit younger was that I struggled to be a complete assassin, okay? Because I was always trying to be self-aware in terms of my own thoughts and my own behaviors. So that led me to have a conversation with my guest here, Naomi, where we discussed a little bit about self-awareness and our perception and how we see ourselves. So I'm going to let her introduce herself and then we'll get into this kind of conversation. I hope you're loving what we're doing right now. Naomi, how you doing?
I'm fantastic. That intro was so smooth. You have the perfect audio voice. I love it so much.
Oh, don't gas me too much. You know I'm going to fall in love.
I'm trying to soften you up a little bit. Like before we get into... Don't be too hard on me today, please.
You trying to get me to trouble, girl. But you know what? Actually, do you know what we should start? Because I think our kind of introduction is interesting, right? Because obviously I saw you on Batchat. You know, I know you don't like, it's like you want to blank that out, baby. And I think that's a perfect way to start, though, because I think that shows the growth that you've gone through, though. I think that's an amazing start to it. Do you know what I mean? I know you now do your podcast, Pretty Girl Problems. Guys, if you haven't heard about it, go check her out, Pretty Girl Problems. I'm going to put the link down below as well. And if you're listening to us, well, you better type it into the Spotify. But you were on Batchat, UK, and then obviously now you're on your podcast and stuff. That's how I first was introduced to yourself. Mm-hmm. I know obviously you've left that behind now.
Far behind.
But that's how I first met you. So let me give my original, we spoke about this before, my perception, because before you got to speaking, I was like, this girl is crazy, yo. She's ready to fight everybody. Like, it's mad. But then when we first connected, I remember you reached out to me on Insta and you was like, hey, like, I think we should connect, And you said the right time, right season, we'll talk. And then we met a few months back. Like, we literally came at the same, guys, we were late. Okay, yeah, we were both late.
That's how we bonded.
We literally met at the door. Like, hey, you late? I'm late. All right, we're both late.
Late together.
Exactly. But I guess, obviously, we can kick it off by talking and say, we both met at that particular point and we spoke about perception. We spoke about self-awareness. I want to ask you a question. I'm going to flip it around. Normally I would do it. I'm going to flip it around. What was your first perception of me when you met me? Not when you saw me on internet, but when you actually met me. We discussed, we spoke, we interacted. What was your first perception of myself, in all honesty?
Okay, so my first perception of you is that you're very down to earth. And I also felt... not that, I don't know the perfect word to use, but almost as if I had met you outside of character. So obviously in interacting with you on social media, seeing your content, I kind of felt like in person I would expect this super big personality, but in person you're just a normal person like anybody else. And I think very often we do find that we kind of assume or expect people to be how they are on social media in real life, which doesn't immediately suggest that that's not who you are. It's just that, you kind of play on your own character when you need to for your content. So yeah, that was my perception of you.
And I love what you just said there, because I think what you had is what I had, because obviously I had an image of what I saw, but then when we actually interacted, I think that's why we've kind of had our conversations. Like, I did not know you was going to come with the level of self-awareness, perception, intelligence, the kind of conversations that we had. I did not know. Because no, listen, let's get into it. If you're listening to this, you can't see her, but if you're watching this, you can. She's a beautiful girl. Listen, when I saw you, I said, "Oh, girl, you pretty, good, sweet girl," but when I actually spoke to you, there was a level that I was getting from you. I was like, whoa, like, yo, this is different. Like when you meet people like that, it's a rarity that when you speak to them, you're actually thinking, you're actually rationalizing, you're having critical thought. So my perception of you was so much more different because, like I said, I saw you on Backchat, and then after when I actually interacted with you face to face, it was like a whoa kind of moment. Do you know what I mean?
I love that. I love that for us though, because I think that was part of the reason why I wanted to go on Backchat, because for what it's worth, I am a bit rough around the edges. I'm not a perfect human being. I have my flaws and so forth. I have a relative big personality, but beneath that, I feel like I have a lot of layers. I'm a politics graduate, and I think I'm relatively smart. So I wanted to kind of go on the show and represent for the people who identify with me, coming from South London, from the ghetto, so to speak, but there's substance in that. So I always find it very validating when I do meet people in person. And like, you know what, you look like somebody who A, B, C, and D, but really this is how you are. And that's another reason why I also started the podcast, because I was so accustomed to being like labeled and categorized, or because you're pretty, you shouldn't like this, or you shouldn't speak this way. And it's like, well, for some, I'm a pretty girl, but this is what lies beneath the physical appearance.
What would you say is a common misconception that people have? I know you kind of probably touched on it a little bit, but what's the common misconception that you get from people?
That I'm dumb, and that I'm very materialistic, or like, I don't know. People associate me with more of like the lifestyle end of society, like the I don't know, the 5-star restaurants and dresses and heels. And I always say I do both, but for the most part, I'm a bit of a geek. I like reading, I like sports, I work out, I meditate. And when I say these things, people are like, you do not look like somebody who meditates. And I always say, like, what does someone who meditates look like? I don't really know what that means. Yeah.
Do you know what? It's interesting because in psychology, we talk about the halo effect, where when someone's pretty, you kind of add attributes to everything else. But there's also the other opposite effect, which is the halo error, which is that sometimes when you are pretty, people can then make a conception, like you just said, about, she's materialistic, or she's dumb, or do you know what? She doesn't know anything, etc., etc. How does it feel when you do hear those misconceptions, though?
I think, do you know, for me, I think we had this conversation post when we filmed, and I said, I've started to understand myself by way of understanding how people perceive me. Because when people throw out these labels like, oh, you're pretty, and it's like, oh, okay, not that I've ever thought I was not attractive, but I don't really think about my appearance as much as people project it on me. So it's like, okay, because I'm pretty, people might think A, B, C, and D. And it's like, that's how I've kind of been able to identify with self a bit more, because I feel like a lot of our identity isn't just how you see yourself. It also is complemented by how other people see you. So I don't know, it's kind of like a learning curve for me when I interact with people and they tell me how they perceive me. It's like, okay, if I like something about how I'm perceived, I obviously embrace it. And if I don't, it's like, okay, what can I do in terms of how I express myself to kind of like kill that relative perception of me, because it's not something that I want to be labeled or associated with.
You know what, man? You're speaking some good speak right now, because I think as a male, and I think it's what gives us interesting dynamic as well. As a male, we make deductions and judgments really, really quickly. So yes, if I haven't spoke to you, my first thought is I'm gonna just see the cover, and then I'm gonna make an assumption. Do you know what I mean? And I think I fell prey to that, because I even said to you, I said, I saw a pretty girl. I'm not expecting the level of conversation that you gave. I'm just gonna be honest with you. And that says more about me than it actually says about you, because actually that's like, why would I make that judgment? But that's how we get conditioned in society, that you see someone pretty, you don't think that maybe the intelligence or the depth they would have. It's a bad misconception. Yeah,
well, the key word that you use is conditioning. And I don't know exactly where we're fed this information, because I don't remember being in school and people saying, this, that, and the other. But somewhere along the line, we do associate, but we like it's a human thing to do, to judge. Like, we have eyes, and then by way of seeing things, we kind of have these ideas and theories about people. But it's definitely something that I like actively try to kill, because you shouldn't judge a book by cover, as cliche as it sounds. So it's what it is.
It is what it is. Do you know what? It's interesting. I think maybe where that comes from is our media, our TV, our films, everything like that. I'm even thinking about Disney. When did you ever see a smart princess? You
It's
never.
true. It's actually true. And you know what's so interesting about that is that, oh, we're going to go into another conversation about femininity, right? Because when speaking about Disney, it's about being dainty. It's definitely about being attractive, and it's almost about dumbing yourself down and making a man feel more masculine by not showing your wits. And I think touched on something very, very important. And I think maybe that is why when people see people who are deemed as attractive, they assume that there's nothing else to them, or more so that they don't expect there to be anything but their appearance. Yeah.
You know, it's I just
found myself in rooms sometimes, and it's a bit of a hit and miss, because I feel like the smartest person in the room is the person who knows how to play dumb. But at the same time, I found that sometimes when I'm interacting specifically with men, I don't want to come across too intelligent, because I feel like I've been conditioned to believe that that's intimidating and that men don't like intelligence. They just want to see you as a pretty girl, and it's almost like adhering to the trophy frame, like a man just be seen and not heard kind of vibes.
Oh, we're going into some conversation right now. If you look, I wish you guys could have the inception to our minds. This is how we're thinking.
What's going on?
Do you know what you're? I think you're so right there, and I think that a lot of times us guys, our ego and our pride is what kind of really rears this ugly head when we're dealing with women, right? Because for as a male, almost as like, if let's say if you consider yourself intelligent, you know, intelligence is like, oh, if she's smarter than me, then bro, like, you know, like
what? Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Kind of vibes.
Exactly. There's no room.
She said, if you want a man to do something, you have to make it seem like it's his idea.
And you know what, Mama, telling the truth, because even me,
it works. It really does work.
It does work, because biologically, the way our minds just are wired, there's a lot of ego and pride, and it's hard to unlearn a lot of that kind of stuff. And you know, what you're saying even then is because what we're talking about now is how coming to the table, right? Unfortunately, there is some level of coming to the table between men and women when we're dealing with one another, right? So if you're pretty, that's a level of power already,
right?
It you know, because it moves somebody. If you're pretty and you were to say, "Hey, can I borrow your pencil?" This guy is not gonna think. He's just gonna be like, "Yeah, here you go."
Yeah. So, like you said, by way of being attractive, that already is a power, because it influences. That's something that women should use to their advantage, but not abuse. And I think I said something earlier, but my mum told me that if you want a man to do something, you have to make it seem like it's his idea. And I think sometimes women can see that as a weakness, like, why can't I just say A, B, C, and D? But really, that is, again, another power to have, to be able to get someone to do something without actually dictating what they should do. And it's almost like the art of submission.
Ooh, baby.
Because, yeah,
y'all don't know.
We're in an era where it's like, oh, everybody wants to show how strong they are, and you know how much they can dictate and influence and force people into doing things. But like I said, the strongest person in the room is the person who knows how to play dumb, and it's a strength to be able to not to act as if you don't know when you do know.
Does what you're saying? You're absolutely right, and I'm agreeing with you 100%. What you're saying, where did you learn that through experience? Did you learn it from your mom? Did you learn that through your politics degree? Because I even forgot that you said about politics. I remember we spoke. You said about politics. Obviously, politics is a game of being able to be aware of the wits and who's around you, knowing what to say, when to say. What the wisdom that you're kind of spitting right now, is that from the politics? Is that from your mom? Is that from experience? Like, where's that coming from?
I think for me it's a collective, but I will definitely say that it's not. I think in the last 4 years is when I was able to experience a heightened awareness of self, and I noticed that I was doing some of these things without knowing, and I guess upon reflection it left space for me to be able to kind of like practice and try and master those skills. One of my affirmations is I can metacognize. And metacognition basically is being aware of your awareness. But in order to be aware of your awareness, you have to know that you're doing something first. And I think it took me quite a long time by way of obviously going through my journey of life to understand that, okay, when I do this, it causes this effect. And when I want to achieve this result, I have to do A, B, C, and D. So that kind of gives a domino effect of being able to kind of master certain arts, such as quote unquote playing dumb, or be the last to speak in a conversation. Because I felt like in my younger years, I knew that I was intelligent, but I think I was so passionate about showing my intelligence that it got lost in expressions such as, what happened on Backchat, for example. Like, I wanted to make sure I was heard. I wanted to make sure people knew that, yes, I'm pretty, but I'm also smart. And you don't have to force that down people's throats. You can have a more of a subtle approach to being able to express yourself and show people that you have A, B, C, and D skills.
What you just said there as well, I'm definitely with you on this boat, because I think that self-awareness piece, if anybody is listening, self-awareness really is being able to understand how your thoughts contribute toward your behavior, and then how your behavior also impacts others as well. So, that self-awareness piece is so critical, because what you had is also what I had when I was in church at this point, and there was a Bible study. And sometimes you can get, when you know stuff, you can get really arrogant, because you just think, I got to say it. If I know it, I'll just say it.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? So one guy came in to the Bible study and was like, he's like, oh, the Holy Spirit told me, like, I don't have to talk every single time. I'm looking at him like, what's this guy talking about? I'm going to talk. If I've got to answer, I'm going to say it, bruv. You know what I mean? Exactly. So it got to a point where I'm like, I think it was like after that session, I was walking, I was thinking about, I was like, but then why do I have to say the answer every single time? What am I trying to prove? And, you start to think about your actions. Being self-aware is about being able to think, okay, why am I doing what I'm doing? And having that consciousness of what you're doing in that moment. You know what I mean? We titled this The Downfall of Self-Awareness, though. That's what I called it. I'm talking about an aspect. I'm not saying it's a downfall. I think it's a powerful thing to have. I think everyone should have it more. But I'm talking about the downfall of it. The difficulty.
Yes.
What is the difficulty for you in terms of self-awareness?
I honestly feel like I know too much for my own good.
There we go.
It's almost sometimes overbearing. Sometimes I don't want to know. And I think the best, example I can give of this is when something relatively painful happens in life, and you kind of know what's to come in terms of it's going to hurt for this amount of time. I'm probably going to find myself escaping by way of, I don't know, drinking, smoking, going out with friends, whatever it might be for you. And then I'm going to have a moment when I'm very recluse. And then I'm going to have a moment where I'm very reflective. And then I'm going to be back on my run, getting myself back together. And I think that awareness sometimes, I don't know, it almost heightens the pain, because it's like, okay, I have to go through this journey. I'd rather just go through it and not know what's happening to me, rather than being aware of the fact that I'm going through it.
And you just hit the nail on the head. That is what I want to talk about, the downfall of being self-aware, because like I said, this is on the back of a podcast episode that I did of myself about being an F-boy, but being self-aware. Whereas other people are just doing as they're feeling, as they're moving. There we go. Don't be laughing at me. Okay, I was an F-boy. Okay, I was quality. But I'm playing.
Hey, boy, yeah, continue.
Oh man, but I was when I was doing that episode, I was talking about the fact that as I'm doing the let's say the madness, as I'm trying to play this girl, I am aware of everything. So I know it seems even darker, more calculated, because you're like, I know every step I'm about to take. I know why I'm about to take it. I know what effect I want to get out of the situation, which makes it whole much more darker than somebody who's just going, well, I didn't know. I just kind of did it, or I just moved on the feeling. And that is the irritating part of being self-aware, because it's like, no matter what you do, like you were saying, you can't get away from your thoughts telling you, but why?
Yeah.
Yeah,
or even that this is what it is. That's another thing. But I think I enjoy the luxury of it more than I hate it. I think last year, it was like, do you know what? How do I make this stop? Like, what do I need to do? I was overindulging, particularly in alcohol, socializing, because I wanted to just stop the noise. It was too much thinking. Like, sometimes I just want to be present and enjoy and not be so aware of my environment, my expression, and how my actions can have a domino effect of outcomes. But now I think it's my power, and if I can appreciate it, like in terms of 90% of my life, that 10% really doesn't mean anything. Like there's going to be times where I'm going to not enjoy being aware, but I'd rather be aware than not aware, because being a negligent person in any capacity or any space in your life is more of a disadvantage than it will ever be an advantage. It's better to be intentional. You know, I say these affirmations about I'm very intentional. I know I'm doing what I'm doing, and you have to understand that these qualities filter through all of your expression. You can't just select one area of life to be intentional about. Once you master the ability to be aware and intentional, you're going to be aware and intentional about everything in life. So I'd rather take it than leave it.
Do you know okay, that's a fair point. That's a fair point. I just guess I wouldn't be a bastard without having to think about being a bastard. That's what I wanted.
You have to, without feeling bad. You don't want to feel bad. But
that's the key point.
I respect it though, because I think the reason why I respect it, and I think it's probably easier to say to you because you're like, I'm on your side because we're friends. Because if I was the friend of the person who's been hard done by, I'll be like, he's a prick. But I think, as harsh as it might sound, you're not responsible for anybody else's awareness, or you're not responsible for how they experience life. So it's like, if you've made a choice that this is how you want to express yourself, and you're being honest with yourself and the person who's partaking, that's all you're really responsible for. You can't help the fact that they're going to get hurt at the end, because that's their responsibility to not be hurt.
I'm trying to thought about it like that.
That's dark, but it is what it is. Like,
this is what we're here. We're here to talk about dark stuff.
That's just the way the story goes.
It is the way the story crumbles. You know what I mean? By the way, I'm not the same way now, guys. Okay, I'm slightly different, guys. Okay, so like, you know, I mean, now I tell the truth. I mean, I always tell the truth, but now I'm really upfront with the truth. If I'm on site, I'm on site. Do you get me?
Right.
Yeah, me, yeah.
Before, I always said that the two types of men which you might still fall under, because you said your intention of being a villain, but I hate one more than the other. I hate men who are negligent and men who are intentional, because at least those who are intentional, you know who they are. Those who are negligent, you kind of make excuses for them because they don't mean to, but they still cause the pain. So I can at least respect you for being aware and intentional and honest, but change your ways still. Just be good.
Do you know? And that's the darkest part of it, because like we're saying, obviously the intentionality versus negligent. When you become intentional with your movements, it's calculated, it's darker, and you can't get away from the emotions you're feeling. Because when we talk about being an F-boy, the whole point is to be a successful F-boy, you've got to be able to turn off those emotions, because that allows you to be cold and that allows you to assassinate without having to any feeling. You know what I mean? But if you are self-aware, what tends to happen is, as you're trying to make the movements, the mind is telling you, okay, so you know why you're doing what you're doing right now, right? Like, for instance, you were saying earlier on, like, let's say you go for a breakup, whatever, right? Being self-aware puts you in a position where you're like, I know if I'm going to go out right now, if I go sleep with a girl, I know why I'm doing it. Whereas before, it's like, I'm just doing this to feel better. No, you now know.
We know at this point.
It's darker than what it seems, yeah.
Do you know what? I don't know if I agree with that, because I feel like it makes... I can accept myself more.
Okay.
And I can look at myself in the mirror knowing why I did it, and I'm being honest with myself. I went through this situation, and as a result of the situation, I don't want to feel like this anymore. I'm going to go outside and I'm going to do this. And it's like, I don't wake up in the morning like, oh, F. See, I did good.
You caught yourself.
Yeah, so you wake up in the morning and you might still feel a bit guilty, because you might have to deal with a reaction from another person based on how you treated them, but you're able to get on with your day a bit easier because you don't feel like you're not being yourself. Yeah.
I guess I've never not been in that position. So maybe that's why I can't fathom that, because I've always been self-aware in terms of why you're doing what you're doing. So I've never been on the other side where I don't think before I do. I almost, in most things, I know
Why?
and why I'm going to make the move I'm going to make. Do you know what I mean? So it's, I've never really thought about the other side in terms of what it must feel like to not be almost knowing what you're about to do. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. I definitely think that's more of a dangerous game to play, because you're just walking around blind, like not really knowing what you're doing. Things are happening to you rather than you dictating and having slight control over your expression and what you experience.
Oh, true point. All right, coming to the end of this kind of conversation, there's something I wanted to you to address, because you made a really good point about this, about when we're talking about self-awareness. You were speaking about a moment where, I don't know if it was an argument or something like that, but you said in that moment you wanted to act and be angry at the situation, but you're almost talking to yourself saying, but why are you frustrated or angry at this moment? I can't remember the conversation. I remember we had it when we were talking last time, but you said you had a moment where you had to like you almost like had a, I don't want to say out of body experience, but you almost were like, wait, why am I doing that?
Right.
You know what I mean? And I want to kind of like tap into that a little bit more, because when we talk about self-awareness, I think we spoke about this as well. It's about that self-awareness. What it allows you to do is make a choice.
Facts.
Without being led. You now know you can make a choice. So I want to kind of talk a little bit about that. When you have those moments where you can really see, like, I could choose to do good right now, I could choose to do bad, I could choose to do this. Like, what is that like? And how are you feeling in those moments when you have those kind of surreal moments?
I feel very isolated in my mind. I feel like literally I'm at a crossroad. And in those moments, I find myself identifying a lot more with my inner child. And I think it's something that I haven't always been able to do. Because I think it's so funny, because even though I'm getting older in age, in my mind, the way my life plays out, I can still vividly see and remember and feel some of the things that I felt in my childhood. So there are a lot of times when I'm interacting or expressing myself or just getting on with my life, and I'll do something and it'll remind me of how I felt when I was younger. And I remember when I had one of my first counselling sessions, and I was kind of putting forward the idea that, you know, it's very important for me to be heard and people have to hear what I have to say, how I feel. And I'm now old enough to kind of like have boundaries and parameters that people are not allowed to cross. And then the counsellor asked me, why is it so important for me to be heard? And I was silent for maybe like 5 seconds. And then the first thing I said is, because when I was younger, my mum, then it clicked for me straight away that somewhere in my childhood, I felt like I wasn't seen and heard. So my adult self was very desperate to kind of re-own that part of my expression and make sure that now, if I feel something, if I want to do something, I am heard. And then that awareness then allowed me to be able to think about, you know, a healthy way to be able to be heard, and, you know, when it's important to be heard, and how important being heard really is. Like, where does that self of validation come from? Does it come from other people, or can I validate myself by way of knowing that I feel how I feel, and whether somebody hears me or understands me or not, my feelings are valid.
Oh, man.
Beautiful.
It's just beautiful. No, you don't understand. Like, yo, when you talk to so many people and they're not self-aware in terms of what they're experiencing at that moment, it can be difficult, because you're so used to being self-aware yourself.
Right.
And when other people are not being self-aware, and again, this is part of the arrogance sometimes I know that comes up. I'm like, but you know you know what you're feeling. You know exactly what you're thinking. Come on, like, don't pretend and lie. Just, you know, you want to go down this path. It's okay. I'm not going to tell you now, because you really want to go down that path, but you want to cover it up with something else. You know, that cognitive dissonance that people sometimes have. And you spoke about something beautiful in that. And I think I'm the exact same way here as well, that the needing to be seen and heard, you know, I felt like that at points in time when I was a kid, that, you know, I just did whatever I need to do, you know, as a kid, but I never felt like I was really seen or heard. I don't even want to even blame the parents per se in this particular instance. I just don't think they had what I personally needed, because every child is different. You know what I mean? And I think that incessant need to be seen and heard and validated, you know, when I was younger, I didn't feel like I was being seen or heard, I think. And I think, as you were saying, I was course correcting as I'm getting older to put myself in places where I'm being seen or heard, which is why I wanted to have like I said, when I had that moment where at a Bible study where the guy said, you don't have to talk as much, I was like, oh, because what I didn't realize was I was talking a lot. When people ask a question, I want to answer it. I want to show them knowledgeable. I want to show them the smartest person in the room. And it's all because I just wanted to be seen or to be heard.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? So you're right on that path about what you experienced as a kid.
Yeah, I think, and I think what I've also found in recent months is that you always jump from one polarized expression to the other. Awareness allows you to meet in the middle. So if in your younger years you felt overlooked, you might in your junior years go out of way to be seen, but then you realize that what you thought you wanted isn't exactly how you're expressing yourself. So you have to kind of work backwards and say, okay, I don't want to feel this small, but I don't want to feel this big either. Like, where is my middle? So yeah, it just comes. You have to actually actively practice self-awareness so that you can live a life that allows you to just feel validated inside, and not that other things are validating you. Yeah.
Do you find it okay? Let me just find it hard, because I think the hardest thing for me around self-awareness also is, let's say, for instance, I remember, I'm a very extroverted kind of person at points. For instance, if I go out and let's say I do a TikTok and dance in the middle of Oxford Street Circus, right?
How you do that, but yeah.
I'll bring you along next time. Yeah, when you see the Congolese wine, the world needs to see it. I ask myself a question sometimes, and I think this is where the difficulty is. Sometimes I ask myself a question. Okay, am I doing it because I want to do it? Or is this my personality that wants me to do what I'm doing? And when I don't have an answer, this is the most difficult part, because I'm so used to having an answer for why the behavior is happening at that point in time. When I don't have an answer, I'm like, why don't I have a straight answer? What's blocking that answer from coming through? I think I find frustration in that when I'm talking about self-awareness.
Because I think you're trying to identify with your future self.
Ooh, what you mean?
So if you're at a crossroad and you're wondering whether you're doing something because you want to, or whether because that's your personality now, you're already a step ahead of your own awareness, because you're thinking about who you're trying to be. Does that make sense?
Break it more for us. I get you.
Because you're in the present moment now. Let's say, for example, I walk into a room and it's there's a debate happening, and by nature I'm very I'm kind, or I'm nice, so I'll go around and say hi to people, and then I might feel that this particular space is not the space that I immediately want to say hi to people, so I might be a bit more recluse. Then I think about the fact that, am I being recluse because I'm scared that people will misunderstand my big personality, or am I being recluse because I actually don't want to say hi because it's not giving me that vibe? So I'm thinking about who I'm trying to be. Like, do I care about how people receive me, or am I doing what I want? And then it's kind of like who am I identifying in this present for the future? It sounds weird, and yeah, I don't know if that makes sense.
I've never really thought about that. That's an interesting concept to think about, you know?
Yeah, because you only be now is now, but then in now you're still trying to, whatever I do now dictates who I am tomorrow. So it's thinking about what I'm trying to be, but while still being here. It's a bit,
My final point, I don't want to conclude it, but you know, we can talk for hours. I think sometimes one of my also struggles with the self-awareness piece is, I think I said it earlier on about the calculated behavior. So, for instance, let's say I'm befriending someone. So not like our situation, because I know we connect on a mental level, we're intelligent, so we're self-aware and we're connecting. But when other people are not on that level, I sometimes ask myself this question, like, am I connecting with you because I want to connect with you? Am I thinking about, that's what your future self, am I thinking about the fact that maybe in the future you're going to help me, or, you know, you're going to open a door for me? Do you know what I mean? And I feel like I almost feel bad because I feel like I'm using people and I'm not sure.
It is what it is. We have to understand that all interpersonal relationships and interactions are, what's the word? They're exchanges, basically. Like, whether you're actively seeking to get something out of someone or not, you're going to get something out of an interaction. And the reason why I said it is what it is because, again, Obviously, like, I'm from South London, so
Same
I'm
here.
confrontational. I'm not a mug. You're not going to take me for no idiot. No. If we have to fight, let's be fighting kind of vibes. But then I found myself in a situation where somebody will do me wrong, and then something in my head is like, you know what? Don't react how you normally react, because in the future, A, B, C, and D, like you're in a position where they're going to come to you and have to apologize because they're going to need you for this or for that, or even by way like their own guilt will eat them up. So I don't have the immediate answer for that particular question, but I just think it is what it is. Like, I'm either choosing to get something out of someone, or I'm naturally going to get something, whether it's good or bad. Charge the game.
And no, but you know what? You charge it exactly. Charge it to the game. But you just this as our final point, you're touching on something that I feel is partly the downfall of self-awareness. Because why should we even think that it is even transactional? Because like, it's normal.
That's word.
You know what I mean? It's normal. Yeah. It's normal for us to connect with people, try to network. But what we described there, we're describing the rawness of it, which is, hey, like you said, and you're right. I've had situations where someone's done me wrong, and I've thought to myself, in the future, you might have to beg and grovel. So
yeah, you're gonna be like, yeah, I know. I'll be like, who are you? Sorry, look familiar. Like,
who you knowing? Don't let her in. I don't know her.
Security.
Get her out of here. Games to the match, baby. Games to the match.
I'll accept that is a dark side or a downfall of being aware, because you're always overthinking. Like, you can be in a room full of people, like, and I think for me, I've noticed that before, when I initially walk into a room, there's like a 10-second or 10 to 30-second moment before I get into character. I kind of read the room. Let me get into character, and then now I know who I'm interacting with, why and how, kind of vibes. But I can't help it. So,
yo, we'll have to talk about that on another episode. But that is a huge. If you're self-aware, if you're listening to this and you're self-aware, I'm sure you probably do this. You go into rooms and you literally size people up real quickly. Mm-hmm. Okay, you're like this. You literally it's almost like you're seeing people, and you're like, I know what to do. Maybe I'm gonna be quiet today. Maybe I might be more boisterous today. You kind of size people up immediately.
Yeah. And you also are able to read those, like, where people stand in their own awareness. I need to play a bit dumber with this person because they like this, and this person's actually more aware, so I can actually still give them a bit of that level-headed approach because we connect on this part. But yeah, it's like, it's all maths. It's all maths and numbers.
Oh, listen, audience, I would love to keep going, but I want to honor the time. But listen, honestly, last point, Naomi, for you. Oh no, thank you. It's a pleasure. Don't worry about that. I wanted to just you to maybe answer this question for the audience. You spoke about being self-aware and getting on your journey of self-awareness. Just for anybody who's listening, how you can use your own experience. How can someone become more self-aware? How can the person start that journey?
Master the art of stillness. And what that means, see your brain like a computer. You have so many tabs open. You need to be able to know the tabs are open and close some down. And you have to download all of the tabs that was in, and you can only do that by being still. I think we live in a world where as soon as you wake up, you're on the go, you're doing things, you're on your phone, you're going to work, and you're forever moving. You need to physically give yourself space and room to sit down and let your thoughts filter and understand what you're thinking, how that's making you feel, and then that allows you to now be aware of what you want to do moving forward. And you practice it. One day you do 1 minute, the next day you do 2 minutes, the next day you do 3 minutes, the next day you do 4 minutes, and then before you know, you're able to do it in a room full of people, on the train, on your way to work, like at a party. You're able to just be still within yourself and understand what's going on in your body. And I know when I first heard these things, I'm thinking, bro, what the fuck? What are you not talking about? Like, what? But that's the only way you master awareness, by being still.
You know what? That was perfect, because that's the same advice I would have given, honestly. Which means I know we're
right here.
Yeah, we right here. Yeah, they don't know, but we're right here. Honestly.
I said they don't get it. They would not come and call us crazy.
Yeah, exactly. They will not come and call us crazy. I mean, I think I'm a little bit, but
that's why I'm so aware. Only
exactly.
Aware, like.
Have you got any projects or anything like that we can get behind, or anything we can jump aboard for you and support you as well?
So at the moment, my earring came off again, guys. But at the moment, I'm really just pushing my podcast. Make sure you check me out on all audio platforms. My podcast is called Critical Problems, and I am working on putting together a workshop, which I was doing pre-pandemic. But now that outside is open, we can get back and start discussing childhood trauma, personal development, and how to really understand the depth of emotional intelligence. But for what it's worth, follow me on all socials at Naomi Bellu, and you can keep up what I'm doing.
Beautiful stuff. Listen, audience, it's been an amazing time. Thank you for joining us for this particular episode on Dark Arts. I know it's something slightly different to what we usually talk about, but you know what? This is all part of the diving into the mindsets of how people behave. You know what I'm saying? I'm gonna have Naomi back on again because we there's some other topics that we need to dive and delve. But you guys did it. Listen, I wish you guys could tap into.
This was let's get down and dirty, like.
They need to know that there is depth that we was going to. When it happened, do you know what? Anyway, listen, audience, you have to, it's a shame you can't get into our minds, but we will talk to you guys again very, very soon. Remember as well to like, share, subscribe on this YouTube Dark Arts podcast. If you're listening to us also on Spotify as well, just make sure you share this with somebody else, man, who would be able to benefit from having a conversation around self-awareness. If you identify what we're going through, what we've been through, listen, make sure you leave a comment down below. Make sure you send us a little message as well. I always appreciate when you guys appreciate me as well. And I appreciate my guest Naomi as well. So listen, we're gonna be out.
Toodles.
Don't do anything I wouldn't do, but